And now one thing I just wanted to mention also with our text, one last thing here, is that the one we found, the Franklin Gothic condensed, matches it pretty closely. I mean, I don't know anybody who would really debate it when they look at it, but you can see that the G is different than that G. It's just not exactly the same. For our purposes, for what we're doing, it's fine. We don't need to go online and purchase the actual font, because the actual font, if we scroll down here after we go down to colors, they have typography, and they even mention Aachen bold, so we were pretty good at matching that up. That is the one they use, and they use that as a headline font in some of their ads, and you'll see that if you look at any stuff online for Buffalo Wild Wings. Also, their secondary font, the one that says the Wings beer thing underneath, they actually use Trade Gothic condensed. And we tried to match it as close as we can, but it actually is Trade Gothic bold and then condensed, and they're very condensed. And you can see that the G is that kind of straight G on the left side of it. Now, we can download this, but when I looked online, there's nowhere to really download it free. It was like $500 or something to get it. So what I did was look up something that was very, very similar, that was kind of an alternate. And I did that. I finally found it at Font Squirrel. That's one of the font sites that we use for downloading, and they have a lot of free fonts there, that are nice for educational use. So for Font Squirrel, the one they came up with was League Gothic. This one here was one, and the reason it says alternate Gothic, because that was one that was very similar to Trade Gothic as well. So the one I found on Font Squirrel was League Gothic. So if you want to download that in addition or instead of the Franklin Gothic, if you haven't done it yet, you could download this. So I'm going to download that League Gothic font, and then when it goes into my downloads, I'll leave it there. I'll just check. I might have to unzip it, so I'll go in my downloads and I'll double click it to unzip it on the Mac. And now it's unzipped, and I think there's a couple different fonts in there. And I'll go to Font Book, and I'll go to my sans. It's a sans serif, so if you have a category for sans serif, or you could just go to all fonts and bring it in. But since I have a category for sans, I'm going to go to File, Add Fonts, and it's actually going right to my downloads. That's where it is. It's in my downloads folder, and I'll just highlight all of these. I could highlight all of these fonts, and I'll hit Open. Now this one I already converted to outlines because I was trying to tweak this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to type this again, and I'm going to type Wings, and you could type it lowercase, and if you type it lowercase, you could go to Character, and I'm going to choose League Gothic. Hopefully that'll show up in my list. And there's League Gothic, and I'm just going to do condensed regular. Okay, and it looks really bold right now, and I'm going to make it all caps. And let me check this one more time. I'm going to go, I think I'm just going to do regular because it still is very condensed. So I think just the regular is going to work for what we're doing. Now I'm going to move this Franklin one over here, and I'm going to put this over top, and I'm going to scale it up as big as I can so it kind of matches the height at least, and then I'll mess with the spacing a little bit, and I'll leave it black right now. I'll zoom in a little bit more, and you can see it doesn't line up perfectly, but there's a couple things we could do in here, and I'll mention that first. So I'll nudge this down, and that looks pretty good with the height. But if I just look at Wings, one thing that you'll see here is that it's almost too narrow. So to make it a little more spread out, there's a couple things we could do. And I'm going to go to Character, and I'm going to open this up. I'm also going to spread it out. I'm going to just stretch it out a little bit. I'm going to try, and I did this before. That's why I'm putting in this number. But stretching out that got the W to almost work exactly on top. Okay, and then another thing I'm going to do, that's scaling it. That's physically if you'd grab on a corner and stretch it out. So that's what that does. And then also I'm going to change the tracking. I think it was something like 15 because I tried this out before just to make sure. So if you spread out the tracking, it kind of lines it up pretty, at least for Wings, it seems to line it up pretty nice. Now there's a couple here that we'd have to tweak a little bit. And now that 20 looks pretty good, except for there's a little bit extra space in there, and I didn't put the period on the end, so I should make sure I do that. You know, it takes a little tweaking to get it perfect, but that font looks pretty good. You know, and what I do like is the G is perfect because that's kind of more distinctive. So that lines up pretty good. And then what I do for color is I'd go up here to color and I'd make sure it's just 60%. And I'd put that down to 60, and that's the gray. And that looks pretty good. That's pretty that matches probably a little bit better. If I move this down here, you can see the difference. You know, we thought we were pretty good with this font, but look how different it looks. It's definitely a more kind of condensed font. The letters are more condensed, but you know, I don't know how many people would really look at this that closely on there. It looks like I guess I have a couple here. Maybe that's the problem I had. Or I just copied it down there. So I'm going to put this back because it lined up pretty well. And I think I already have the trademark and the register mark on there. And this thing I don't need anymore, so I'm going to unlock my layers, and I'll delete this one over here. I'll unlock the original logo. I'll delete that. Then I'll even turn off the layer behind it so I'm seeing just my font, and that's all I need. I'm going to delete that one. So this is my finished logo. So I'm going to save this, and then we're going to be able to copy and paste this into our Photoshop document once we start working on that next. But I just wanted to go over the part with the colors that you could bring in a Pantone color, or you could mix up the exact CMYK color, and we could also match the font. You know, with a little searching, we were able to match the font pretty good. So the next step is going to be starting a Photoshop document and bringing in this logo as well as some other images.